Hello everyone. Drop a comment if you can hear and see me. I want to make sure this is working. So let me know you're here. This is the first time I've done a private training as a YouTube live. So hopefully this works. The last time we did it, it was a Facebook live and just not as user friendly sometimes. So we are live, and today's live training, let me know in the comments where you're from. Let me know if you have questions about this topic. Our live training is going to be all about how to guide a writer, specifically a content writer. So whether this is a writer that's creating content for you, the company you work for, the company you oversee, this training is specifically how to guide a writer to basically go from brand new, pretty green to amazing on your content or your brand content, whichever it is you're looking for. So we're going to jump into that in a minute. I'm going to share my screen and we are going to get right into the topic. And I'm just making sure that this is working. Let me go ahead and click this button, view on YouTube. Okay. All right, it looks like we are live. Let me go ahead and give you a link as well in the comments to, let me see if I can do this. Yes, I can. I'm going to give you the link again. It was in our email that went out this morning, but we have this little document that kind of guides you through the short steps that I'm going to talk about today in more detail. Okay. So let's jump right into this topic. This is something I'm really excited about because these are some of my street secrets to success. It takes a while, in my opinion, to guide a writer, so be ready for, there is some curve there. There's time involved, but if you can guide a writer and teach them basically how to understand your brand voice, how to write content that's going to get read, going to bring in conversions, and you can keep them for life, that's incredible. And in fact, over at Express Writers, where we do this for our clients, we match up writers on a regular basis because of that very fact. If you can teach a writer one specific client or brand guidelines and then keep them on that track, amazing things happen. Content just becomes seamless and beautiful. Okay, so we're going to start by, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to start by kind of teaching you some of the things to look for whenever you are getting that first assignment back. So let's say you've hired, it could be a freelancer, your first contractor, whatever kind of writer it is that you've hired. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to actually show you what it looks like. A little bit of inception here going on. This is StreamYard, but we're going to switch to Word. So I'm going to show you what it actually looks like to guide a writer. And these are the steps that I use specifically. Okay, so let's say you've gotten your first assignment back from a writer. Excuse all my messy windows here. This is real life. Let's say you've gotten that article back, right? You just put in an order, whether it was at an agency, it was at a contractor, you hired your first writer, and you got the piece back. What do you know? How do you know what to look for? I think is the best way to say it. How do you know that this piece is going to work? So we're going to start there. And I'm going to show you, there was a writer I recently hired. She came straight from academia, which any writer that's going to come from the academic world, let's say they just graduated, they just went through essay writing boot camp, there is more to unlearn. There is more to teach because content writing is so vastly different from the essay writing world. So this writer came in, and the first pieces of content, I was not thrilled, and I wasn't sure where it would go because you really do have two directions with writers. I'm going to show you what it looks like to guide a writer. So that's very important. I think sometimes 80% of your relationship with a writer can come from how you guide them. So if you want to keep them long-term, guide them well. Don't be too negative. Be positive with your criticism, but at the same time, let them know how to improve. Don't hold back. So, as it always happens, I'm always worried because the ratio for us is like 40, I would say 40%. If sometimes, this year it's been more like 50 to 60%, which is good. So first of all, when we hire a writer, they take a test. They go through that qualification first. If you're not doing that, I definitely recommend start with a test piece. And if it's just way off point and it cannot be saved, like we're talking non-native English, there are things that are very hard to salvage. Those are the things that may be better just to move on. But if this is what you get back, this was the first draft after the writer studied our guidelines, and that's important. We're going to switch over for a minute to the document that I sent you, the short link for this, and this will go out in the email afterwards as well. So before the assignment, you don't want to deluge them with information. We've seen clients send us, oh my gosh, 30 packets of information. Don't do that, because then what you'll do is you'll overwhelm them and they really won't know what to do with that, right? These are humans. You have to treat them like a human. So send them the right information. And this is an example of what we send all of our writers. So we have some very basic optimization rules that are very, very simple. Substance is now the number one factor Google looks for in content. We want our writers to provide us with substance. We want our writers to write content of value. And then we have a very simple two-step SEO checklist. And this is honed after years of learning what works to get content in the top of Google. You need the exact match keyword. Yes, even if it's difficult, you have to have that exact match keyword at least once in the meta title, the meta description, at least one subheader, and then inside the first 100 words. So that's important whenever you're reviewing content. Know your keywords and make sure the writer's using them, because I can tell you 90% of the writers that we work with, their first assignment missed this. And if your goal is to rank in Google, you're not going to rank in Google. So make sure the writer is reminded, we have this, they get this before they start to write, but so many writers completely forget it. Even content writers that had some experience. Now, the ones that are more experienced, you'll see more optimization happen, but we hire writers, from all walks of life. We hire experienced writers, and then we hire writers fresh out of college. And that's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a writer fresh out of college that just got an English degree. So there was a lot on her part to learn. And today she's writing rock star content. But the learning curve took us about a month. So that's really important, is whenever you are sending an assignment through, make sure that they have, if your goal is SEO, make sure that they have this, something like this, whether that's your content strategy person puts together something. We definitely have SEO consultants. We change this depending on what works best. So you can copy and paste this, but you should also check if you have an internal department that does this for you, or a consultant, and get a list of SEO rules for the writers to follow. Okay, so additionally, beyond the goal, which if it's SEO, make sure that's some of the first things they read about. Then talk about what type of content you want to see. Give them tons of examples. Well, by tons, I mean 3. 3 is good enough. You don't want to deluge the writer. Don't forget that. So this is probably in total, like 500, 600 words, right? And then we have this 10 guideline. This is basically our brand style guidelines as well. And then we have this very in-depth guideline document that it links to, which you could say that's quite a lot, because yes, it is. But our goal is, if they read it once, if they read it twice at the most, then they will know how to write amazing content. And this kind of document is amazing to refer back to. And again, you can definitely take notes from this. Don't copy and paste it, because I'm sure you have your own brand style, but you can absolutely use this to inspire some of the things you do. Like, for example, this one, linking. We don't want just any links. We recommend these sources. We name some sources. We tell them to link to our other posts and how to do that. If you need an internal link, just Google the topic and then Google Express Writers and make sure the blogs you pull are not any older than 2015. So simple rules like that will really help your writer. First of all, if the writer forgets and you're looking at the content and you're like, uh-oh, the writer didn't use, 3 through 10, all you have to do is refer the writer back to these guidelines. And I do that several times. I expect there to be a learning curve. Remember, your writer is human and they are not going to get it perfect the first try. So it's very important that first of all, you have the groundwork done, meaning you have a document like this, you have clear SEO checklist. If you don't, write that down. Make sure that's something you do this week, this month, is to get with your team and put together a list of SEO rules for your writers. And then refer to that, refer all your writers to that. Okay, so, and by the way, if you're in the membership, the Content Hacker membership, we have a whole document, I should say a whole drive full of a bunch of different documents that help. And this one today is going to be stored in there as well. Another document we have in there are writer briefs. So these are the actual briefs that I send my writers. And it's very simple. Look at this. One blog, 2,000 words. Here's your focus keyword. Here's your topic. Here are the things I like that are in the top of Google that we need to do better than. And then here's the related keyword terms to use. So this is all a writer gets, plus those guidelines, right? We really don't want to deluge them with information. And what happens is once you start to guide them, there is magic that begins to happen, because when you get a good writer that really enjoys to write, and you give them free range, like this is free range, right? We are not telling them, we're not giving them an outline. I don't ask to see an outline first. I just give them the keywords, the topic, and here's the top of Google. And I want you to do better content than what's here. And one of these is pretty old. So in my opinion, not too hard to do that. You can study those, do your research. And if you're a good writer, you've built that skill, you can create something amazing with just this small of a brief. And what happens is whenever you open up creativity like that, you don't give them an outline or give them too much, you may get better content, because this really encourages them to rely on their skills and go do the research, go put together something that's very current. So when it comes to your actual brief, less is more, but only if you've done the background work of creating these guidelines first. And you don't have to do all this in one day. This can come slowly over time. I think these optimization rules came first, and then we built examples, and then we created these 10 guideline, just a short numbered list. We did that a while ago, and then we changed it up once a year. So that's also important. Because what worked last year definitely doesn't work this year. So we change up our guidelines at least once a year. We don't do it more often than that. We've actually had clients that have changed their guidelines once a week. I can tell you that causes mayhem. Don't do that. Your poor writer will be stressed the heck out. Try to keep the guidelines the same for a period of time, like at least a few months before you change them. And that's why it's really important to involve your consultants, your team, and put together something really good. Run it by decision makers if you have to. Have it take a few weeks and then launch it, because this document, is like the writer's Bible, basically, for all of our writers. And these are given out to all the writers that write for my content. And we do like 40 pieces a month between all of the guest blogging that we do. And that brings in all of our business, 7 figures a year, clients, prospects every single day. So that is how we use those guidelines. Okay, so let's jump right back into what happens when the writer sends in the assignment. And let me go over this really quick. During the assignment, you want to be present. You want to let the writer know after you give them the assignment, hey, I'm here for any questions. A lot of writers, they tend to work independently, and that's okay. But at the beginning, like, you want to be their teammate. You want to be their partner. You want to let them know you are here for any questions, because the chance is, you know a lot more than they do about what they're writing about, at least at first. And then, after a while of consistency, like I said, magic really begins to happen. And I swear some of my writers, they know more than me when it comes to SEO, and that is totally fine. Okay, so what happens when you get a first assignment? So this is not for me. This is actually for a client, which I think is a better example. Because this is in the technical industry and this isn't something I am super close to. So this particular piece had to be approved by an end client, not just me, and it was. But this was the first draft. So let me tell you why. At first glance, this may look good, right? It's 2,000 words. I see like a good flow. But let me tell you why this is not fit for publishing and why it needs a lot of work. So we're going to do a little side by side here. If you're on your mobile phone, by the way, I definitely recommend switching to desktop. If you are, very nice. So let's see. This document should have my feedback. Okay, and it does. So here's what I do with a new writer. I spend, and this is what I highly recommend for you, if you are basically the content manager, you oversee content, dedicate at least 30 minutes. If you have a new writer, they're sending an assignment today, unless they're an expert and you've paid a heck of a lot of money, make sure, and even then, like I would at least spend 15 to 20 minutes, because no matter how good that writer is, they still have to learn your guidelines. So before we wrote this document, this is for a client called Hyperwrite. They are a artificial intelligence writing tool, and they have specific guidelines. So we studied those specific guidelines in depth. What's funny is they actually hired me to consult, and I created them. So those guidelines talk about, I won't show them to you because I'm sure the client wants me to keep it private. But the guidelines basically say our goal overall through these blogs is to become an industry leader, right? And then the voice, the tone, we want informative, but we also want direct. We want professional, but we also kind of want casual. These are going to be read by real people in marketing roles that relate to humor, right? Things like that. And here's how their blog turned out. Very pretty. My team, Express Writers, also did the graphics, so really nice work. But going back to these drafts, here's what's wrong with this first draft. So right away, right, we talked about SEO. Oops, the focus keyword is missing from most of this article. You're going to come across that with writers. Just be patient, remind them until it's like part of their belief system in how they write. They're like, I have to pull that focus keyword. Like I said, 90% of the time, even with really good writers, their first assignment is missing that focus keyword. And it's so crazy to me. You can bold it, you can tell them, but you still have to look for it. And if it's missing, not good. Okay, so here's what I told the writer. So first of all, the focus keyword. This was the focus keyword, how to write better. So it's missing. It's not here. It should be in the first subheader. It should be in the intro paragraph, word for word. And that's an easy keyword to fit in, how to write better. But again, if you're not thinking of it because you're just worried about, whatever it is you're worried about on your first assignment, that's going to happen. So what I did to rework this was, first of all, I read through it. And then I realized that the introduction did not speak to what was coming. And that's very important. You have to have an introduction that teases the rest of the article, right? So that should be right away the first thing you see. Now, this introduction wasn't horrible, right? So this is where you have to have that honed eye, so to speak, for what good, engaging content looks like. This intro reads well, but the problem is it doesn't speak to what's coming. So here's how we changed it. I gave her an example. I rewrote it for her to show her what we're looking for. So I like to address the audience, writers, which she did here. If you are a writer, right, that's good. But this is even more direct. Writers, hey, are you spending more than 15 minutes staring at that blank document? Question mark. A question is a great way. See, I have 3 here. You don't want to do more than 3. Questions are a great way to hook the reader. statements that are also very statistical based. What the industry's worth, where the industry's going that you're writing about, also very good. So it has to hook. This does not hook. This is a little bit too long and a little bit too wordy. So asking the audience a direct question is a great hook. So I'm teaching her that, right? Here's how to structure your hook. And then we talk about what's coming, which was completely missing. So she addressed the reader. That's good if you're a writer. But then there's nothing about what's coming. So that's what I added here. Well, this guide on how to write better. Oh, there's our keyword. This guide on how to write better is for you. So after we ask these pain points, right? And this is following a formula, the PAS, problem, agitate, solution. You name a problem, you agitate it, and then you talk about the solution. That you cannot go wrong. You cannot go wrong. And I should probably add that to our writer guidelines. But again, I don't want to inundate our writers too much. But that formula is amazing. So we're talking about the pain point. Hey, writers, are you spending more than 15 minutes? Are you stuck in a vortex? Pain, pain, pain. This is the pain point the article solves. Very important. You don't want to you don't have to talk about the pain point you solve as a company. You can, but it's more about the guide, the article. What is the article solving? So that's the pain point we're addressing. That's the pain point we're agitating. So then we tell them solution, right? Problem, we're agitating that problem. Oh, is there burnout? Is there brain fog in there? Solution, this guide, not your company, not the brand. This guide is your solution. Content that builds trust equals conversions prospects, not content that sells you. So the solution has to be the guide, and you keep people reading. You have people appreciate what you've written. You have people learn from your content. That's when the magic happens from content. Content that builds value, that is. This is not a sales page, right? This is an informative blog we're talking about. So that's why the solution presented is the guide. And I taught her that trick. So this guide on how to write better, well, it's for you. Inside, you're going to learn tips on how to write better from leading pros in the online writing space. And again, there's the keyword. So I'm adding in what she said, which is good. Good news. This doesn't mean you're not a talented writer. And then we keep this as well. Actually, no, I highlighted this and I put a question mark because it didn't make sense to me. It means you have not learned an effective way to funnel that talent from inside you onto the paper. So basically that sentence is too long. If I don't catch what it means in a second, right? We have like a couple seconds to grab attention. The writer needs to rewrite it. If it's too long, if it's too wordy, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. This is a technical industry, right? We still need to make it very clear and concise. That doesn't mean we need to dumb it down. It just means we can cut some words. And I'll show you the final piece that went live and the difference because the writer put in some amazing work. She really, really put in the work to rewrite this. And like I said, that'll happen in our experience. For you, it could happen 100% of the time. In our experience, it happens like 50 to 60%. We have 40% of writers that are like, oh, I don't want to do this work. And then they bow out and they're gone. And that's not a writer that was going to be serious anyway. But we have writers that take this feedback and run. And then that's when the magic happens. Whenever you teach them and you guide them and you really take time on their first assignment and you give them very, very detailed feedback like this. You actually put it inside their document. So then what I asked her to do is to restructure. So the goal of this piece is to quote some influencers in the space, right? In the content space, and give our readers tons of value. So what I wanted her to do is name the experts in the subheader. It only made sense. And then I suggested, why don't we give them a fun title? So that's missing from these subheaders. And what that does is whenever you have a piece that quotes any influencer, you should make a big deal about that. Because if those influencers see it, and for example, they've been named, something fun, something that they identify with, they're more likely to share it. And shares, it's just going to maximize the results of this piece all around. So I asked her to go back through, and she also had spelled the name of that influencer wrong. So I let her know, this influencer would be very offended. You got to be clear with your writers. If you see errors like that, be very clear. John Morrow, he's one of the world's top read bloggers. She had his name misspelled as well. So those are small things, right? A name misspelling. Okay, so what? Well, that's an influencer. And if they see that, what will they think? They will probably write off our brand right away because they didn't get to their position without care. And if they see that coming from us, they may write off this brand hype right away. And again, that may not happen. They may not care. But it could, because I've seen it happen. I've seen prospects write us off for publishing typos and leave. Okay, so I restructured this for her to show her how to write this in a way that works better. So Joanna should have been the focus if we were quoting an influencer, right? We have this image. It's kind of haphazard because the quote from Joanna is not up here, but her images. So flow, this is what we're correcting at this point. We are correcting flow. So right away, Joanna Wiebe, and there's a screenshot from Joanna Wiebe. Okay, it's very clear what we're going to talk about in this point. Clarity wins. Clarity wins. If you don't get a clear takeaway, so over here, we're kind of stuck wondering, well, who is this? This is a tip about headlines. Okay, and here's a screenshot about a headline. Okay, but if we had addressed who this was first, clear right away. And that's what you want your content to do, is provide tons of clarity. So Joanna's main tip, see, I focused it right here, and that's what she did, which was good. But there's nothing about it up here. So we should lead with who this influencer is. And that's what I did. And then I moved the statistics down here. And then I asked her to rewrite that and have that same flow here. So we're going to rename this according to the influencer we're talking about. And then we're going to feature his quote higher up and then break it down. And that kind of flow makes more sense. So anything that makes more sense is our goal. So I just, I stopped there because that was enough to have her know the direction to take. And that's important. And that took me about 30 minutes, right? It can take a while. So sometimes that is all a writer needs, is for you just to rework one example, and then they can run and do the rest. And that's also a really good thing to do instead of reworking the whole thing, because again, like, you're giving them some breathing room and some space to be creative. And sometimes writers can really wow you. We've seen that happen too, like just amazing creative stuff when they're given that liberty. So after we get very clear on what we need to see, and again, this is all about really 2 goals. We want to hit the top of Google for that keyword. Well, 3, our second goal would be, we want our influencers that are named to feel respected, to feel honored by this piece, not to have their names misspelled and the flow haphazard, but to truly feature them. And then we want flow. So that's really the 3, I would say, errors, concerns that we saw in this piece that we really addressed with this writer, Sarah. So here's the final piece. And I want to show you it because it's just such a dramatic difference. And time, before we look at it, I want to let you know time is really important. You cannot rush a writer. Rushing a writer is like the worst thing you could do. It's counterproductive. It's anti-creativity. So I often give writers, this is a 2,000 word piece, took a lot of research to go find 10 really good tips from the pros. Something like this should take a week, and then what I did is I gave her 3 more days to revise it. And that didn't include the weekend. So really it was like about 5 days because it landed on a Friday. So she took my intro, my new intro, immediately. That's a great hook, right? Writers, we're speaking straight to our audience, straight to who they are, straight to their pain point. That formula, and I'm going to write it again up here because that formula is so good. The PASS formula. So problem, agitate, solution. I've written a blog breaking down that formula. It's a very old copywriting formula. So that works really great for a blog intro. Name that problem that your audience has, agitate it a little bit, and then tell them. So look at this. She took my tips and ran with it. She even shortened my sentence, which is great. Really good stuff. And then this is a great CTA. We didn't talk about CTAs earlier, but CTAs should be in the same structure. It should talk about the exact same problem that you're naming and the solution. So remember, the solution is our guide. We want people to read and learn from our guide. That's when we build trust, massive trust. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we can't promote what we're selling, our product. And the way you want to do that is through carefully written CTAs. And what we like to do is we like to have one above the fold, a very simple text-based one. So it's not, giant in your face, some humongous graphic that you have to scroll past, because that can really interrupt the flow and the readability. But what we want to do is have another one at the bottom, and the one at the bottom can be a lot larger. And the way they do that, I believe, is an image, which I've actually led the design of that image. So let's go see what that looks like real quick. And that's it. It's just one above the fold and then this image. Yeah, so that's what that looks like. And then we have a little text-based one above it. So that's a really great way to have your CTA set up. And of course, that can differ depending on your goals. So if you want someone to book a call, if you want them to sign up for a lead magnet, that may look different. By the way, guys, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. We're going to take a break soon and switch over to your questions. Okay, so the final piece, this writer took the feedback and she ran with it. And it's important to know that you really want to stay with the writer, especially a brand new one, for a good month. Like, just stay on their piece, whether that's you give this training video, by the way, a replay will go out. You give this training video to your editor and they are the person that does that. You're totally welcome to do that. Or it's you looking at the content, because what happened is this writer, while this first piece turned out really good, she kind of went back to her old habits and 2 weeks later produced a really poor piece of content that had typos, things missing. Life happens. Life happens. I think this writer is actually pregnant. So there's some pregnancy brain there. You can't ignore life. So we don't, come down on writers for that. We just stay with them until this is second nature. And one day it will become second nature. It can just take a couple months. So learning brand style and really getting that down is very important. So here's what she did. She reworked the whole thing. Look what she gave. I left the fun titles up to her. So she called David Ogilvy the OG of copywriting. Very nice. So she came up with all of these titles herself. John Morrow is a blogging hero. Sonia Simone, writer extraordinaire. Really good stuff. So she came up with the revamped H2s, and she restructured the flow. And now this piece is publish ready because it makes sense, right? The flow is there. The subheader addresses what's coming. The thing right below it backs up the subheader. There's flow and there's sense. And, I've heard it said, clarity wins over cleverness. Very, very good. And one thing we're doing in these pieces, after we are teaching and educating, like for this piece, it's now 2,500 words, which is awesome. So after we have those 10 influencer quotes, then we are teaching what is AI, how do humans and AI work together. And then we have screenshots of our tool. And what we've done is we've kind of worked this into every piece. And something I've started doing as of this year, the beginning of this year, is the last section of your blog, like the final H2s. That can be a tutorial of the thing you offer. And what's really cool is if you structure it tutorial-like, it's not a yucky sales pitch. It still provides value. So that's what we did with HyperWrite, right? Because the writer can jump in there, take screenshots. Screenshots are super important to create visuals. especially if you're talking about a tool, any tool, you need screenshots. And how the writer delivers this to me is I have them, and this always requires teaching. No writer has ever done this on their first try. I have them embed the screenshots in the Word doc so we know where to put them when we're uploading in WordPress. And then I have them send me a zip, and that zip includes the images named. And this is important for your alt text. And if you teach a writer, regularly to do this, again, it all becomes second nature. And then your life gets so easy because all the images are named already with alt tags. So we got hyperwrite, that's the name of this image. Predictive text, that's a keyword we're trying to rank for with hyperwrite. And alt text really does matter. So that is a simple thing you can also teach your writers, is to take screenshots, include them in a zip, and then name them appropriately, name them what the alt tag would be. And then I have all my writers end documents with a meta that we can take, we can add into WordPress. So this piece is ready to go, and I can tell you that their blogs are already starting to rank, and we just started writing for them about 40 days ago. So this stuff works. And that's why I wanted to use this example, because, if I use an example from me, well, Julia, your stuff has been ranking for 10 years. So I can tell you that this works. It's not just keywords, it's flow. Does the piece make sense? As you read it, are you getting what you need right away from the subheader, from the content below the subheader? And let me know in the comments if it would help you to see these 3 examples. And if you're in the Content Hacker membership, which is $35 a month, which I definitely recommend getting in. I know a few of you are. If you're in it, this will be in our community drive. And if you're not in it, I'll give you temporary access. But definitely consider that $35 a month membership to get all of these goodies inside this giant drive that we're always updating. Okay, so we're going to switch to questions. If you have any, I'm going to let me go see this link on YouTube really quick so I can pull up questions, because I think my backend comments are not working. Okay, I don't see any questions. Hopefully the comments are working for you all. If you're on desktop, you'll see it like this on the top right-hand corner. And if you're not on desktop, I think it also appears on mobile at the bottom. So let's get back into publishing, right? So the last part of this is, let's see. The last part of this is after you finish the assignment, then it's important to make sure you have everything you need for publishing. So that's the file. Oh, we already talked about that. That's the file, and that's all these little images named with alt tags. Very important, very important. The more you train your writer what to do, that makes your life a lot easier when you go to upload this to WordPress, the more you'll get better results around, 360. It'll be a seamless circle. And the time it can take to teach a writer, it can take a while. It can take this particular writer, Sarah, it took us at least 2 months to where I'm reading the content, but I'm not spending more than 5 minutes fixing something tiny because she really knows what she's doing. So that is important. That's critical to success. Okay, so Connie left me an email about comments. Very nice. Okay, that's weird. You have to create your own channel. You should be able to log in with Gmail and leave a comment that way. But if not, let's see, we need an alternate channel for questions. You're in the membership, Connie. So if you also want to open Slack and drop any questions there, just do that. And I have it on my phone, and then I can see that as well. And I would use the channel Live Meets, and you can drop your questions there. Sorry about that, you guys. You should be able to, I tested this, you should be able to log in with your Gmail or your Google account and then leave a comment. So that's weird. YouTube, Google, all these platforms. Yes. Frustrating sometimes. But I hope this gave you a lot of ideas. and helped you a lot. We're now doing, this writer did, I think, 12 blogs, because again, like keeping the same writer, of course, if you do high volume content, it's not always possible. But this writer did 12 pieces for this client. And the first 3 were a difficult learning curve, right? I was going through 30 minutes on each and spending a ton of time leaving comments. And really the main thing was flow and keywords. Otherwise, like there's still good stuff here. And that's important. You don't want to work with writers that really don't know what they're doing, because then it's very painful. So that is really where to begin, is make sure you get writers that are vetted, that know the skill of content writing, that know how to write SEO content, especially if that's your goal, is to weave in those keywords. And then make sure the piece has flow and makes sense. And that will get you readable content. So Google likes readable content. It's not just about the keyword. It is about creating something that makes sense. And at first glance, this looks pretty good. We have all the things that we talk about in our guidelines. We have statistics. We have some flow because it's broken up and there aren't heavy essay style sentences. So she did look at our guidelines and took a lot from it. But then it really comes down to you and your content eye and being able to look at it and say, okay, there is no hook. There is no real hook. Here's how to write a good hook. And if you know your audience, if you've been spending time with them, then you know their pain points better than anyone else. Or if it's your content strategy team, get their feedback. An editor that's been working on content for a while, get their feedback. And that will, Connie says, do you see my comments now? I'm glad you're emailing me, Connie, because I can see that on my phone. So I'm really happy. Okay. Now, yep, I see the comments. Very good. Okay, so Connie asks, you have to create an entire channel. Oh, okay, yeah. Dang it. Well, thank you for creating that channel, Connie. Maybe now you can YouTube. I'm just kidding. Content is still my number one. It's interesting. YouTube is kind of demonetizing their creators. And I started spending so much money on it this year. So that was a bit frustrating to see that happen. Okay, so your question, you're talking about uploading to WordPress. You run on Wix. Okay, yes. The other question would be WordPress versus Wix. Yes, I can definitely answer that. So these rules definitely apply to WordPress most of all. Let me see. I can show you, but they still apply to Wix. Like you can still take these rules. And I believe Wix has an area for you to put in the meta title, meta description. So that's good. And I have heard people like web designers I trust say they have clients ranking with Wix. The most important thing is not to make sure you have anything heavy on your site, Connie. And if you want to drop in your site, I know I should know it by now, but if you want to drop it in the comments, I can take a look at it. But here's what it looks like in WordPress. We use the Yoast SEO plugin. We use the free version. We don't pay. For the premium, you can. I believe the premium version allows you to do schema mapping, which is important if you've never done that. That basically it's like telling Google, hey, here's all my content and here's how it's categorized. It's kind of technical. I've never done it. My web designer has. But this is what it looks like to put in a meta and a title in the back end of WordPress. And then Yoast gives you this nice little green line to let you know if it's too short or just right. So that's what that looks like. And I do believe Wix has an area to put in the meta title and description. And you can definitely still use it. Wix is not, horrific. It really isn't. But if you were to pit, so to speak, one against the other, definitely go with WordPress long term. I always recommend it. And the main reason is because WordPress allows you the most functionality. So if you wanted to add forms, pop-ups to your site in a way where you're not boxed in, to what Wix offers, which some of it is SEO friendly, but some of it is not. So long term, if you're going to use all the site features, definitely like rebuild your site on WordPress. And by the way, you'll also see more rankings happen. Like it will happen, especially if you're blogging consistently. But this client that I'm consulting, Hyperwrite, they put their blog on WordPress. And it was only after that that we saw rankings start to happen. And rankings were happening for this brand new blog within 30 days of publishing content. Now, we were doing 3 blogs a week. So that's a high velocity. That's a lot of content, 2,000 word blogs, right? So it definitely does take high velocity, consistency, as well as great content. It takes both now if you really want to, power up and get some serious rankings quickly, as opposed to waiting for a while, just publishing one a month and seeing what happens. So getting consistent with your content, you guys probably already know how important that is. I teach that all the time. We haven't missed a blog in 10 years on the right blog, which is a little ridiculous to think about, but it equals 100% of our marketing. Yes, so good question, Connie. I definitely recommend WordPress long-term, and we have a good person in the VIP community, Bruce Theed, that can do that for you if you're looking for a WordPress designer. I'm going to put him in right here. He is someone I would definitely trust because he knows SEO and how to build an SEO-friendly site. Back when I had the Content Hacker built, which is now really starting to rank after 50 blogs and I think 60 site pages, which is not a lot. Express Writers has 1,300 blogs and 80 pages. And we're ranking for 20,000 keywords. And we get, about 5 to 6 prospects a day. So, content velocity and quality really plays in. Cannot stress that enough. Get consistent at it. But Content Hacker is now really starting to rank. We're getting featured snippets rankings. It's pretty exciting. And this is a custom WordPress theme that I had someone build who was very expensive, but totally worth it. Because what we're able to do with things like content blocks, and I don't do it all. I have SEO. We have consultants that help, which I highly recommend. I don't recommend you doing everything. You will get burned out. It's a lot to do. But long-term, WordPress is great, and having a custom theme designed and built for you. You could use Divi. You could use frameworks. But a custom theme is great because it gives you the blocks. It gives you custom blocks you can work in over and over that match your brand, and you can really control it. So all of our sites are on WordPress. Long-term, I highly recommend it because you will get the most out of it. Wix isn't terrible, I think, especially if you're starting out. But long-term, make it a goal to get off of there and get on WordPress because it really is the most SEO-friendly CMS that you could ever be on. Okay, so let's see. Did we cover everything in today's topic, how to guide your content writer? And we're going to send a recap out after this. So you're going to get this document. And then we have tons more in the Drive community folder. We have templates, an SEO blog template that you can actually just copy and use that is proven to work, and then examples of writer briefs. But if you guys have questions, definitely drop them in the comments. Connie says, thanks. Thank you, Connie, for signing up for a YouTube channel just for today's training. Oh, sorry about that, you guys. Tech is always a bit difficult to completely figure out, especially when you're live streaming. Content, sure, I can do that, but live streaming, always difficult. So if you don't have any other questions, let's see. We talked about what to do before you give an assignment to a writer, right? The framework, the groundwork you do, very important. Don't deluge them, but I recommend spending time with your team, your SEO department. If you have multiple decision makers, spend some real time with them and get a list together. These are the SEO rules, that we want to give our writers. These are the rules we want them to follow because we know this will produce content that ranks. And it's great because this is a brand new client, Hyperwrite, and these are my own writers at Express Writers, of course, and we are already getting their content to rank in 30 days. So those rules definitely work. But like I said, definitely spend some time with your team, your SEO team, if you have one, and see what they say, because it could look different, especially if you're in that tougher industry niche, what Google calls YMYL, your money or your life, right? Your money or your life. That's finance, legal, medical. So if you're in those industries, it could take a little bit more to rank. So get with your team, your decision makers, your SEO, and put together a checklist for your writers. And then make sure you have brand style guidelines, examples of content you love that you also know works, right? Like these are examples of top ranking content. We don't necessarily like this brand, but they have a top ranking piece of content. So I like that. So the examples you pull don't have to be your content. In fact, sometimes it's better to model after content that's working better than your content. And then you give your writer an even better standard to match, unless you have content that is crushing it. And then, yes, give them that as an example. And then we talk about, where to place images. We talk about little things like that. And that's why this writer who came straight from academia, didn't know much, she read these guidelines carefully. And then she read the background guidelines that we have for our writers as well, because the first piece was still structured correctly, right? It was just missing that flow. It was missing that hook. And we had some typos that were just not pretty. We don't want to misspell influencer names. So it's very important to dig in, even though like at first glance, this looked good, but the client would never have accepted that. In fact, it may have offended those influencers if we had published that. So don't take content at face value, guys. Really dig in, study it. Does it make sense? Is it clear? Is the flow there? Is your reader going to get good from it? And then do the groundwork of having this built first, so you can always refer the writers back to it. And over at Express Writers, we even have some unique concepts, right? So we have a Dropbox folder of all of those unique concepts. So you may have that, or you may want to build some in your business and then give that to your writers. And these are just for various courses, trainings we've built things to make it simple for our writers. Simple for our clients and our readers. So I want to give those concepts to our writers. Do you have any original concepts you've developed? Put that in a Dropbox folder, give that to your writers. And I have a writer that really likes this and uses it a lot, which is really cool because this is a great graphic. So if you have concepts that you've developed in your industry, and a lot of you people are very smart, you've probably done something like this, or you probably could, then do that. Give your writer a folder of unique concepts to work into the content. And then go through the guidelines that it's going to take to write good content for your brand. Or if this is a client's brand or someone, a subset, maybe another department, think about that and customize the guidelines for that. We have some Fortune 500 clients at Express Writers that have multiple brands, and they do have very detailed brand guidelines per brand, even though there's one brand above them all, right? So that could happen. If you have multiple blogs for multiple goals, you might want to create multiple guideline documents. So the majority of documents we have are 2 total. We have this one, the example guidelines. Well, these are not examples. These are the guidelines. And the writer actually gets these as a task. So if you work in Basecamp, wherever you work, you can assign this as a task and actually ask the writer to complete it and read it. And that's a really great way to know that they've studied your guidelines and gotten familiar with it. And then the secondary doc is one we have just for all writers, because we are a writing agency and we are quite detailed like that. We are that crazy. So we have background writing guidelines that apply to structure, flow, things like that. So that may be unnecessary for you guys, especially if you hire writers that know what they're doing. And this writer really did. She knew flow and structure, but she just didn't know, conversion or trust focused flow. Big difference, right? There was flow because it's broken up, but there wasn't flow in terms of it made sense. It's going to pull the reader down to the next point. It's going to engage whoever reads it. And then her final piece was really, really beautiful, a work of art. She created this amazing hook, and it was even shorter and better than mine. She took my advice and ran with it. And then simple, well-written CTA, and like I said, a month later, we went backwards and she sent in something like this. But life happens. It may happen with your writer. You just have to reinforce the rules. And what I learned is that, this feedback, while it was very direct and I told her exactly what was wrong, the focus keyword is missing. Restructure these tips. It's very direct. That works. Writers appreciate that because they know exactly what you're looking for, but don't be negative. We've had clients that, we've actually fired clients that told our writers derogatory things. I'm sure none of you will do that, but that is just something to never do. Never insult their intelligence. Never tell them this is terrible. It'll kill their creativity. And that's the last thing you want to do with a writer, especially a writer that has this much potential, right? This final piece at 2,500 words is really well done. Great flow, clarity. Every single H2 is clear. The content backs up that H2. It's coming and it's very readable. Okay, so we're coming up on our hour. This has been so much fun. I hope it was fun for you guys too, and you were able to learn a lot. And of course, we're going to send out a recap as well as this link. So you are welcome to send this link to anyone on your team. If you want an editor to review this, someone that's closer to content than you are more than welcome to do that. Yes, Connie says, good on you for firing clients. Exactly. The last thing you want to do is stress out your writer. It's just so unnecessary. And we've learned that. There's no amount of money worth having a writer chased away that was a really good writer. So that's important. You want to keep your writers, make them happy, and don't be discouraged if the first piece is not what you expected. Because as I showed you, that first piece was really not on par. But eventually she wrote this incredible piece that is now ranking for keywords within, 30 days of getting posted, which is crazy. So Google appreciates clear content. That just proves that point. Not just keyword optimized stuff, but clear, focused copy that has H2s, copy that backs up those H2s, right? And it's just, like Italian chefs create this amazing dish and they love it. That's how I feel about really good content. I just love seeing it happen. So let's do that. Let's be the publishers of amazing content, and it will get you so far. If you've attended any of my other trainings, you know what I think about advertising and marketing. Really, it's not a hidden thing. It's a known fact that is lower ROI now than content marketing. So creating content that builds trust and gets found by the people searching for that pain point is incredibly high ROI. We couldn't be in a better age, and I know it's tough times, right? There's a lot going on, a lot in the climate. But those aren't good times. But the content consumption age we're in is incredible. It's never been a better time to produce content that wins. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with that pep talk. Go create amazing content. And I hope this helped you a lot. Look for an email in the next couple of hours with a recap. And again, you're more than welcome to share this video with anyone that's close to content and is in your team that you'd like to kind of help guide them on what good content looks like. Okay, guys, I'm going to let you go. Connie, I hope you have an amazing day. Thanks for being here. And thank Thanks to the others. I don't believe you left comments, but I know we had others here as well. And that's totally fine. You know, sometimes you can treat trainings like podcast and listen while you work. But we'll do these about once every few months now, these live trainings. So keep an eye out. If you're on my list, you'll hear about them, of course. And I hope you guys have an amazing Thursday. I'll see you guys around.